people that are on the phones all the time, but they only got 2 or 3 people in their office. A lot of their users are remote. So being able to put out a full deployment for half the cost of what you would with using Polycoms or even Araya phones kind of sways them in that directions. One nice thing about a lot of the Grand Streams, and I will admit the budge tones are really crappy phones. The GXP series phones aren't that bad. Their early versions were really crappy. The newest versions, they're decent phones. We'll say that.
How much, can you give me some sense how much you buy them and what's the price for those things?
Well, we'll retail the phones for about $135 a piece for the GXP's 2000 series, and the 2010 series are about $147, $140, about $150 retailed. The phones actually, the nice thing is a lot of people are looking at the 2010s because they have 18 programmable key buttons, either speed dials, Asterisk BLFs, and the BLS is the key feature. Okay, and that's why a lot of people are looking at, well, the Grand Stream offers the same feature set as, say, buying a Polycom and then buying a sidecar to get 10 or 12 lines to show up. You know, Polycoms you get, I think the max is maybe 6 presences. That's not really practical when you have 10 people in the office you want to watch. You're talking almost $500, $600 for phones and a sidecar at costs per desk so they can monitor the phones versus $150 for a phone and being able to do the same thing. It's a big difference, especially with people working on a tight budget. And in today's economy, that's you're starting to see. I'm starting to see more people looking at this as an alternative. The most common demands that we have from our clients are, again, BLFs, shared lines. They're coming from a traditional phone system. If they have a phone system at all, most of them don't. They have 15 phone lines coming into the office and 15 phones with rollover. What a pain in the butt. People that do have phone systems in place are generally using shared line appearances, so they're used to seeing when somebody's actually on a physical line. I've played with the shared line presence as an asterisk, and I find it to be very ugly. Maybe somebody else has...
I don't know if you've taken a look at our old commercial stuff for. We have shared line, which we're actually moving into our open source. Again, it's based on the asterisk stuff, so, but it uses conferences, but it works pretty well for a certain sized company that just wants to, you know, get that same experience.
Well, there's this philosophy, and again, I'm a networking guy more than I am a phone guy, so I'm coming from a different approach for most people, I think. The phone system should be handling the phone calls, not the user. A user shouldn't have to select whether a line is active or not. They should be able to just pick up the phone, make their call, and let the phone system do their job. That's much like you with a web browser. You click on the web browser, you don't care if the web server's up, you just put your address in and it should find out where it's at and go to it. Same concept with a phone system in our opinion. Pick up the phone, make a call. It's up to the phone server to find out what's available and what's not available, which is again where our backup lines over the voice over IP trunks come into play. Their lines are full. They can still make outbound calls. And based on that, BLFs are the best way to go about setting up the phones. BLFs under asterisk with the Grand Streams, knock on wood. Most of the problems I've found have been asterisk related. The last rendition of the don't get me wrong, the Grand Streams do have issues, okay? We all know that. A firmware update here, a firmware update there, fixes and breaks things. And I'm not one that likes to update firmware at all if I don't have to. If it works, don't fix it. The last rendition of their firmware did have some issues with BLFs, but only when you were applying it to XML, their XML configuration pages on their screens. What we did find was we were having a real hard time with BLFs working, and it was an asterisk problem after we did a upgrade to 0.21, 1.4.21 I think it was. Yeah, then all the problems disappeared that we were having. And that was great. It ended up being, but GrandStream had no idea. I was on the phone for weeks with GrandStream. They thought it was their problem, and they kept trying to fix something and couldn't get it fixed. It turned out to be an asterisk issue. So I think it's mainly an issue with the hints command, with the dev state and the hints command with asterisk. I think there was a problem with that. Yeah. So we can't blame the phone for that, even though that's what people were looking at and we were looking at too. It really was asterisk, and it wasn't Druid. I was wondering if it was a Druid issue, but it wasn't. It was an asterisk issue with those.
Actually, we've now backported some device state stuff from 1.6.
And I'm using it. And I'm using it, exactly. The second key thing on here is they want illuminations for do not disturbs. A lot of phones have a do not disturb button. And if you're using BLFs and you put the phone in do not disturb, most people don't know you're not in do not disturb. They just send a call to you and it kicks back, goes to voicemail and whatever. So being able to illuminate the D&Ds while you are exactly. Unfortunately, at least the way we've written it so far is when we've used the custom device state, we've had to add a custom hint into the dial-in plan, which now is a manual process, which is great in a way because the Druid interface allows us to get in there, make the modification, and not affect everybody else in there. We have to make some customizations to the dial-in macros so that when a call now comes in, it looks to see whether or not there's a D&D flag set in the asterisk database to then turn around and route the call appropriately or not. So we've had to make modifications to handle that. Again, the nice thing about the dial-in plan that you guys have set up is all the dial-in function is done in a macro as opposed to in the actual extensions config, which saves a lot of time when you have a bunch of extensions that you're trying to manage. You just modify it there and it affects everything.
I have two questions for you about GrandStream and Druid. So first of all, can you tell us how well is our support for GrandStream for you? That's one. Second thing is, very often people try to get around the BLF issue shared lines by giving people flash cards. So I was going to ask you, what do you think about that actually?
I haven't implemented any flash consoles yet. I've been looking at them. I haven't found anything that does what I want it to do, so I haven't really implemented anything. But as far as getting a phone working, it's actually really easy. The only thing you have to do is go into the menu when you get the phone. First off, you get the phone, you go into the menu, you set the VLAN tag to 512, reboot the phone. Plug it into the network, it automatically is picked up, you go right back into Druid, you see the MAC address, you start assigning it, and it works just like any other phone. I know that people have said that it's difficult to set them up, and I have not experienced that. I've set up budge tones, I've set up the GXP series, and they've set up just as quickly and just as easily as the Polycoms. The only key is you got to set that VLAN tag. Now, one thing I will do is I'll set the VLAN tag on the phones, I'll provision them, then I'll go back in, I'll take the VLAN tag out and let it get a new IP address. This way I can take the phone from the outside server. This way we can we'll just hard code the config files in there to look at our external IP so we can remove the phones around. But that's just so that we can take the phones out of the office and move them around and everything. But it's really easy to set it up. I haven't had any problems. It did take me about a week of digging around to figure out how to do it. But it really is super easy.
What improvements would you like to see? What improvement
I'm bad on that.
Like provision of fault in particular GrandStream for you?
The provisioning functionality, now that I know what it is, isn't that difficult. I think the biggest thing for
interface to set the BLF
that
automating.
Yeah, what I was going to say is but that as a platform, I think that would be a little bit difficult to implement. But if there was a functionality to be able to, through a graphical interface, assign BLFs and sign the programmable keys for that phone, that would be great.
One of them to a DND and stuff like
exactly.
that. We'd really like to do that.
That would be really key because now I'm not having to go in and modify all their P commands. Okay. I'll gladly sit down and work with you guys on some recommendations and all for that.
DruidCON, get people together.
Yeah.
To face-to-face talk on things like this. Because sometimes, as you know, right, you send emails, sometimes it's very hard for us to get the message until
yes,
and talk about it.
And then sometimes it's the same with people sending me, I've gotten like 12 messages